Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Brother and sister, welcome back to Islamic Notes channel. Behind the dashing uniforms, medals of honor, and cheers of victory at military parades lies a story rarely told to the world. The story of thousands of American soldiers who, after years of war in Muslim lands, found true peace not in military barracks, not under the proud flag of their country, but in the simple words, La ilaha illallah, Muhammadur Rasulullah. This phenomenon did not emerge suddenly. It all began on the battlefield, a place where humanity often finds itself on the edge between life and death, between faith and doubt. When American troops were deployed to Iraq and Afghanistan in the early 2000s, most of them departed believing they were fighting against terrorism, bringing freedom, and upholding world peace. But beneath the propaganda, many soldiers began to feel something different: emptiness, confusion, and a growing doubt within. They came armed, but what they found in Muslim lands was not just war, but a life very different from what they had imagined. Amidst the rubble and the sound of explosions, they witnessed something they had never understood before. People who continued to prostrate themselves to God, even as their homes were destroyed. Children who had lost their fathers yet still smiled when the call to prayer sounded. Women who had lost everything yet still prayed with hope. A former American Marine named Michael Anderson once said in an interview, "I came to Iraq filled with hatred. I thought I would find enemies, but what I found were people. People who were patient, kind, and faithful in an extraordinary way. They had lost everything, but they hadn't lost their faith." For many soldiers like Anderson, moments like that were the starting point for change. When they saw Muslims continuing to pray amidst the destruction, they began to wonder, what made these people so strong? How could they continue to prostrate themselves to God while the world around them was crumbling? That question became the beginning of a quest. Some soldiers developed a curiosity. During breaks at their base, they began to learn about Islam. Some read a translation of the Qur'an they found in a small shop in Baghdad. Some watched lectures on the meaning of life. Others simply sat with locals, listening to them talk about faith and patience. Another soldier named David Miller, who served in Afghanistan, told a similar story. "I didn't believe in anything. But one day I saw an old man praying on the side of the road while gunfire rang out in the distance. He remained calm, not afraid, not panicked. After that, I thought, I want to have that kind of calm." From that initial curiosity, many soldiers began to realize something they hadn't learned from military training: the meaning of life. They had been trained to be obedient, disciplined, and brave in the face of death, but no one taught them how to deal with guilt, inner fear, and emptiness. They could survive on the battlefield, but not in their own hearts. When the war ended and they returned to America, some of them didn't return as heroes. Many returned with deep emotional wounds, the loss of comrades haunted by memories of war and living with trauma. Yet it was in those darkest moments that some of them began to discover the light of Islam. Those who once thought of Islam as a source of conflict began to see that it actually brings peace. They began reading the Qur'an not to criticize but to understand. They discovered verses that spoke directly to their hearts, such as Allah's words in Surah Ar-Ra'd, verse 28, namely, "Those who believe and whose hearts find rest in the remembrance of Allah. Indeed, only in the remembrance of Allah do hearts find rest." For many emotionally wounded soldiers, this verse was like breaking through a wall of frozen hearts. They realized that peace does not come from victory in battle, but from surrendering to the Creator. Some began secretly visiting local mosques. Some met with the local imam. Others watched video sermons online. These small steps eventually led them to a major decision: reciting the Shahada. In recent years, reports from various Muslim communities in America have noted an increase in the number of converts among soldiers. Many of those who were previously atheists or Christians have now embraced Islam with conviction. The number now stands at around 3,000 people and continues to grow every year. Encounters with the Qur'an, when God's verses penetrate soldiers' hearts. After the war ended and the dust of battle began to settle, many American soldiers returned home with a heavy burden on their hearts. Although their bodies had survived, their souls were wounded. They were haunted by horrific memories, guilt, and questions about the meaning of life that the military could never answer. Most of them tried to escape, through parties, alcohol, or even tranquilizers. But nothing could truly erase the emptiness in their hearts. But slowly, some began to discover something different, something gentle, soothing, and something they had never imagined: the Qur'an, an unexpected beginning. For many American soldiers, their first encounter with the Qur'an came not in a mosque, but in unexpected places. Some found it in a war tent in Iraq, some were given it by locals as a token of friendship, and still others read it out of pure curiosity. A former American officer named David Miller recounts, "I served in Afghanistan in 2009. A little boy gave me a small green book. I thought it was just a prayer book. But when I opened it, I saw unfamiliar writing. A translator told me it was the Qur'an. I don't know why, but I took it home. One night, I read the translation, and my life changed." David read the translation of Surah Al-Baqarah, verse 286. "Allah burdens not a soul beyond its capacity." The verse struck him like a light in the darkness. For years, he had harbored guilt over the loss of his comrades on the battlefield. But that night, he wept, for the first time, not from grief, but from feeling God's loving presence. "I felt like Allah was speaking directly to me," he said, as if he knew how tired I was. The power of living verses. Stories like David's are not unique. Hundreds of other soldiers who have now converted to Islam share the same story: that the Quran is not just a book, but a gentle voice that speaks to the hearts of those seeking truth. A former Marine named Jessica Thompson, now Aisha, found Islam after reading a verse about forgiveness in Surah Az-Zumar, verse 53. "O my servants who have transgressed against themselves, do not despair of Allah's mercy. Indeed, Allah forgives all sins." She said that verse made her cry for hours. She had felt her life was meaningless after the war, but that verse made her believe that Allah still had a door open for her, the secret of peace in prostration. After becoming acquainted with the Quran, many of them tried to learn to pray. At first, they felt awkward. They didn't know the recitation, didn't know the direction of the Qibla, and sometimes felt strange prostrating on the floor. But the more they practiced, the more they felt a peace they had never felt before. One veteran named Jason Lee, now known as Yusuf, said, "When I first prostrated myself, I cried. Because for the first time in my life, I felt small in the face of something so great. I realized that all this time I was fighting for this world, but now I was prostrating for the afterlife." For those accustomed to military discipline and order for years, the 5 daily prayers were not difficult. But what moved them was their meaning. The command to pray was not just a routine, but a moment when a servant truly submitted himself to Allah. And there, they found what they had been searching for: inner peace, facing conflicts of the heart. But the path to Islam was not always easy. Many of these soldiers fought alone, without the support of family or friends. Some feared being labeled traitors, especially since they had fought against Muslims. But that fear gradually faded, replaced by a strong conviction. "I didn't convert to Islam to please anyone," said one veteran convert. "I converted because my heart had finally found a home." For most of them, the Quran is a bridge between a painful past and a hopeful future. Its verses give new meaning to their once dark lives. Every time they read, they feel like they are speaking directly to Allah, not aloud, but with a gentle whisper that soothes the soul, from readers to practitioners. After learning about the Quran, many of these soldiers went beyond reading it. They learned Arabic, attended Islamic studies, and even memorized several short chapters. Some of them now serve as Quran teachers for other converts. From battlefield to mosque, a journey back to peace. After a long journey through war, emotional pain, and a search for meaning in life, hundreds, if not thousands, of American soldiers finally found a guiding light: Islam. But their journey didn't end with the Shahada. Instead, it was here that a new chapter began, a more peaceful but also challenging chapter in their lives. Where they once wore their military uniforms with pride, now they wear robes or simple clothes when they come to the mosque. Where they once marched with weapons in hand, now they line up in prayer rows, their hands raised high in response to Allah's call. Allahu Akbar, the first step to the mosque. For many converts from the military, the first step to the mosque is not easy. Many feel awkward, afraid of being judged, or even afraid of being rejected. But in reality, most of them are greeted with warm embraces by the local Muslims. One story comes from Sergeant Brian Thompson, now known as Abdullah. After returning from Iraq, he began searching for a mosque in his Texas town. With a pounding heart, he arrived on a Friday. He sat in a corner, silently watching the people praying in congregation. After the sermon, an imam approached him with a friendly smile and said, "Welcome, brother. This house is your home too," Abdullah wept. "I've traveled the world," he said, "but this is the first time I've truly felt home." Simple moments like that became the starting point for many of the soldiers who converted to Islam to truly feel accepted. They discovered that Islam wasn't just a religion, but also a new family, a place where they could let go of the burdens of their past without being judged. A peace unheard before. Every step into the mosque, every movement in prayer, became a spiritual therapy for these veterans. Those who had previously suffered from PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, began to find a peace that no medical therapy could provide. "When I prostrated myself," said Jason Lee, Yusuf, "I felt all my guilt being lifted from my heart. I was no longer haunted by the past. I felt forgiven." Prostration became a symbol of total submission. Previously, they submitted to the orders of their military superiors. Now they submitted to the commands of Allah, and in that submission they found true freedom. Some even said that the sound of the adhan reminded them of the call to duty, but with a much deeper meaning. Previously, the call to duty meant preparing for war. Now the call to prayer means preparing for peace. New communities, from soldiers to brothers. This phenomenon has given rise to many new communities in the United States. One such organization is the Muslim Veterans of America, where former soldiers who have converted to Islam gather, support each other, and help fellow veterans who are going through difficult times. There they hold congregational prayers, Quranic studies, and social activities such as distributing food to the homeless and helping war victims. They feel this is their new form of jihad, not with weapons, but with goodness. "We used to be trained to shoot," said one member of the community with a smile. "Now we're trained to control our anger." The community also helps veterans who have recently converted to Islam feel less alone. They provide guidance, provide copies of the Qur'an, and teach them the basics of worship. Even more amazingly, some of them are now religious teachers and preachers who actively share their life stories with the wider community, especially with other soldiers still searching for the meaning of life. From wounds to light. Islam gives them the opportunity to make peace with their past. They no longer view their past as an irrevocable sin, but as a journey leading them to guidance. They begin to understand that everything happens by Allah's permission, even war, perhaps a path that leads them to light. Sergeant Abdullah, who served in Iraq, is now actively preaching to other veterans. In one of his sermons, he said, "If I used to go to Iraq carrying weapons, now I return carrying the Qur'an. I used to be afraid of death. Now I'm afraid I won't be able to live in the path of Allah." These words illustrate the extraordinary changes in their lives. They not only change their religion, but also change the direction of their lives, from hatred to love, from destruction to hope. Changes in family and environment. Not all of their journeys were smooth. Many faced opposition from their families, were shunned by friends, and even lost their jobs because they were considered traitors. A wave of guidance in America. When thousands of soldiers recite the Shahada, the phenomenon of conversion to Islam among American soldiers can no longer be considered a small or coincidental event. In the past 2 decades, more and more soldiers and veterans have abandoned their old lifestyles and chosen the path of Islam. According to records from various religious institutions and observers in the U.S., more than 3,000 soldiers and former soldiers are now registered as converts to Islam, and that number continues to increase every year. For many, this news is shocking. How could they, who had been sent to fight in a Muslim country, return with the Quran and prostrate themselves to Allah? But to them, this is nothing strange. They see it as destiny and an answer to long prayers they previously didn't understand. The seeds of guidance that grow on the battlefield. This profound change often begins with small things. Most soldiers admit that their first revelation came when they saw the steadfastness of Muslims amidst suffering. I saw them lose their homes, lose their families, but they still managed to smile and say, Alhamdulillah, said Anthony Lopez, a former Mexican-American soldier. It made me think, what do they have that I don't? From there, curiosity was sparked. They began reading the Qur'an, listening to sermons, and even discussing it with local imams in their assigned areas. Some brought home copies of the Qur'an given to them by local residents, and those copies changed their lives. I brought back a small book from Iraq, said Michael Turner, Mustafa. I thought it was just a memento of the war, but it turned out it led me to God, a moment of shahada at a military base. The most touching story comes from a military base in Afghanistan. In a simple room, 5 American soldiers gathered at night, far from the hustle and bustle of war. One of them recited the 2 sentences of the Shahada with a trembling voice. The others stared, fell silent, and then slowly joined in. That night, amid the sound of helicopters and the crackle of gunfire, they shed tears. They no longer saw Islam as an enemy religion, but as a truth that transcended ideology and weapons. Some of them even asked permission to fast during Ramadan while on duty. Although it was difficult, they did it with strong determination. And there they experienced the true meaning of patience and piety. I fasted in the desert heat, wearing a steel vest and carrying a weapon. But strangely, I felt light and calm, said Sergeant David Johnson, Ali. Maybe it was because I finally knew who I was truly serving. A phenomenon that shakes perceptions. This shift has raised eyebrows in Western society. The media, academics, and even church circles have begun to wonder. Why is Islam so often portrayed negatively, attracting the attention of those who have seen the dark side of war the most? The answer is simple: spiritual honesty. These soldiers are not seeking religion for its popularity, but for the experience of life and death. They were once on the verge of mental collapse, seeing death so close, and in those moments, they found God. I've seen everything in this world, says James Carter, Ibrahim. Power, weapons, death, everything. But when I read the Quran, I saw something bigger than this world. I saw the truth. A new life in the homeland. Upon returning to America, they began a new life. The mosque became a place of refuge and learning. Many of them lived near Muslim communities, changed their names, and began to adapt to a simpler life. However, many faced difficult trials, losing their jobs, being shunned by old colleagues, even being considered traitors. But for them, losing the world was no problem, as long as their hearts were at peace. I lost friends, but I gained faith, says Christopher Hughes, Hamza. And that was the greatest gift of my life. Some veteran converts to Islam became bridges between Western society and Islam. They gave seminars, spoke on campuses, and wrote books. Their stories serve as clear evidence that Islam was not spread by the sword, but by truth. Voices from within the military. Surprisingly, this phenomenon is also beginning to be officially recognized. Several reports from military chaplaincy institutions indicate a significant increase in the number of Muslim soldiers enrolling in Islamic spiritual programs, military chaplaincy. Now, at various American military bases, Muslim soldiers have prayer rooms, Qur'ans, and imams. Islam used to be considered foreign on base, said Chaplain Omar Henderson, a military chaplain who converted to Islam in 2012. Now the call to prayer can sometimes be heard in the dormitory area. It's a sight unimaginable 2 decades ago, Islam as peace after war. Those who have witnessed the fires of war have become ambassadors of peace. Islam teaches them forgiveness, gratitude, and self-improvement. Many of them are active in social causes, helping homeless veterans, building Islamic schools, and supporting orphans in countries in conflict. I no longer carry a weapon, said Abdullah, a former Marine. I carry a bag filled with Qur'ans and food for the hungry. I used to destroy people's homes. Now I help rebuild them. A global phenomenon. A similar phenomenon is also beginning to be seen in other countries. England, Germany, France, and even Canada. Hundreds of former NATO soldiers have also reportedly converted to Islam after witnessing the strength of Muslim faith on the battlefield. They realized that Islam is not an ideology, but rather the natural human quest for peace. One famous story comes from Harry Fear, a British journalist who covered the Gaza war. After witnessing the steadfastness of Muslims amidst the destruction, he embraced Islam. A similar story happened to German soldiers who had served in the Middle East and are now starting to form a growing German Muslim community. Major impact on the Western world. This change is slowly shifting Western society's view of Islam. Books about Islam are becoming more widely read. Mosques are becoming more crowded, and interfaith dialogue is on the rise. More and more people are realizing that Islam is not a threat, but rather the answer to the spiritual emptiness of the modern world. We used to look for meaning in life on the battlefield, said Mustafa Turner. Now we find it in our prayer mats. Islam in military barracks, when the sound of takbir echoes through army bases. Days on American military bases are usually filled with the clatter of footsteps, loud commands, and the sound of combat training machines. But now, at several headquarters, a new sight unimaginable just a few years ago is revealed. Soldiers stand in neat rows, then quietly bow their heads, prostrate themselves, and recite a prayer in Arabic. The sound of the takbir echoes softly through the walls of barracks that once only heard shouts of command. That's the new reality at several American military bases. Islam now lives within the military compound, a prayer room in the heart of the barracks. This change began with a simple request. A group of Muslim soldiers asked for permission to have a small space for prayer. Initially, it was an empty, former warehouse space. They cleaned it themselves, laid out a carpet, and posted the direction of the Qibla with a small compass. From there, the first prayer room on the base grew. "We didn't need a big space," said Ali Matthews, a convert to Islam and an army officer. "We just wanted a place to bow before Allah." Over time, the presence of this prayer room attracted the attention of other soldiers. Some curiously joined in, sat quietly in the back, and some even imitated the prayer movements. And from that curiosity, the seeds of new guidance emerged, the call to prayer at a military base. One day at Fort Hood, Texas, a soldier named Imran, formerly Eric Sanders, dared to call the first call to prayer at the base. His voice was soft but firm, echoing among the rows of tents and metal barracks. "Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar." Several of his comrades paused. Some were shocked, some listened silently, and still others shed tears without knowing why. For them, it was not just a call to worship, but a symbol of the revival of hearts in a place once rife with war. Congregational prayer in the midst of duty. The 5 daily prayers are now part of the routine for Muslim soldiers. They strive to fulfill their duties despite the rigors of their duties. Sometimes they pray in the open field behind combat vehicles, sometimes in a cramped space among piles of equipment. "We don't know if we'll be alive tomorrow," said Sergeant Abdullah, an Afghanistan veteran. "So we make sure we don't miss every prayer." In some instances, congregational prayer becomes a point of interfaith unity. Some non-Muslim colleagues stand behind them out of respect, and some even bow their heads, feeling a profound sense of peace. Fasting amidst combat training. When Ramadan arrives, the atmosphere at the base changes. The Muslim soldiers fast throughout their rigorous training schedule. They endure hunger, thirst, and heat, but they smile nonetheless. Their commanders, once puzzled, now support them by adjusting their dinner schedule so they can break their fast. "We thought they would be weak," said one of the military trainers, but it turned out they were more focused and disciplined. They said, "This fast is to train the soul, not just to endure hunger." After sunset, they broke their fast together, with dates, water, and prayers. Some of the non-Muslim soldiers who ate together began asking about Islam, and quite a few of them eventually followed in their comrades' footsteps and recited the Shahada.